This is Saving America with your host, Dr. David D. Schein, author, professor, attorney, and all-around useful person, presenting the intersection of business and politics. Enjoy common sense commentary and interviews with some of the world's most interesting people. Now here's your host, Dr. David D. Schein.
Thanks, John, for getting our show launched today. We're kicking off this edition of Saving America with my weekend review commentary. As the World Cup kicks into high gear in North America, what else is going on? Trump economy hot and cold. Cuba on the ropes. Time to end teen takeovers. Let's take a closer look at these and other hot stories for week 25 of 2026. Followed by my interesting guest this week, award-winning singer-songwriter Glenda Benevides, who is also an inspirational author. Before we dive deeper, a quick shout-out to all of you, longtime listeners and the new folks who've just joined me. Your support keeps this whole thing moving. If what you hear strikes a chord with you, post a like, leave a comment, and hit subscribe on whatever platform you're on. Something crosses your radar and the slopstream media is ignoring it, as they tend to do, you can always send it my way at drdavesavesamerica.com. I read everything that you send in. Trump economy hot and cold. America recently released its May job numbers and updated March and April. It looked like really good news with strong hiring in those months. And the unemployment rate stayed at historically low mark at 4.3%. Of course, I also mentioned that I was a bit cynical about the hiring report. Why? Since we're also told rosy numbers during the Biden-Harris administration, just to be told later that they were fanciful at best. In fact, the administration, after it left, there was a restatement of 1 million jobs that didn't happen. Now, some different reports are flowing in as the May numbers get released. The CPI, the Consumer Price Index, that's the tracking statistic that tells economists what you and I really pay. It's up to an annual rate of 4.2%. This is a big hike and more than double the target of 2%. To put it in perspective, this is the highest inflation in 3 years. That means most consumers' pocketbooks are really being pinched. It also bodes poorly for the GOP in November. If they cannot reverse this trend and quickly, built into this is $4.60 national average price for a gallon of gas. Although here in Houston, at my local Costco, it was $3.39 a gallon. My point being, the average price includes super high states like California and Oregon. Worse news is that the wholesale inflation index is up a consumer punishing 6.5%, with energy prices a key driver. This is the fastest rate of increase in 3.5 years. Then, balancing the headline hiring report from last week, jobless claims rose to 229,000, which is a big hit in itself. However, again, adding to the confusion, job vacancies were up to 7.6 million. I'm not believing that number. The net is that with inflation up, an increase in the Fed rate might be expected. However, due to the political pressure, I expect the rate to stay the same, not increase. If inflation tilts down, that is probably the max rate. On the other hand, it could be tough to keep the rate the same if this inflationary cycle continues much longer. So what are some real signals regarding the economy today? While Houston's FIFA operation is doing well, there are empty seats at other U.S. FIFA locations. Reports are that $20 will buy you a hot dog and $20 more for a beer. That's a lot more than many people's budgets will stand. Security is more strict at venues than the TSA, but they aren't checking for bombs. They are making sure fans aren't sneaking in food. Prices are at a breaking point as more and more people are refusing to play the game. Musicians are canceling concerts due to Ticketmaster prices that go to that company, not the performers. The big question is this mostly stagnant economy where wages are not growing to keep up with inflation, Why are we seeing prices rise so much for non-essentials like concerts and sports tickets? Don't get me started on the ludicrous prices for the NBA playoffs that just ended. And to cap this week's American finances, the failure of Social Security is now projected to hit a year earlier in 2032 instead of 2033. Think about it. If you're on Social Security and getting the average $20.81 a month, suppose it is cut by 20%. That would be a measly $16.65 a month. For many people, their rent is higher than that. This is not some government giveaway. We, American workers, have paid into these funds for decades. The government has squandered the money. Now they want us to suffer. No, it is time for them to suffer, not the people who paid into this Ponzi scheme. This is the fault of both political parties. No more kicking the can down the road. The end of the road is now. As I proposed recently, the politicians need to adopt Dr. Dave's plan to save America. It can be done. We all need to insist on that. On board with me is the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, Jason Smith. He recently announced that it was time to fix the system. Of course, these clowns were talking about increasing Social Security taxes and reducing or delaying benefits. This is totally unacceptable. This government has taken in trillions and squandered it. Time to cut other government spending and return the stolen money to Social Security and Medicare funds. I have seen reports that Social Security disability payments are being given to people who can work. This is fraud. It needs to be corrected. There are also reports that many Social Security payments are going to people who are already dead. As a quick short-term solution, a full audit of what is currently being paid out and to whom needs to be done. And of course, illegals who did not pay into the system must never receive benefits from any of these programs. Cuba on the ropes. I mentioned recently that the U.S. government indicted Raul Castro, age 95, the late brother of Fidel Castro, the murdering commie. This was based on charges related to Cuba's 1996 shoot-down of 2 U.S. civilian planes with 4 dead. I doubt he will live long enough to be called to justice. Other Cuban leaders have been sanctioned, of course. Remember that the Obama administration threw handouts to the regime there. What did it get us or the people of Cuba? Nothing except a few perks for the Cuban commie bigwigs. So on May 1, Trump signed an order indicating that tariffs would be assessed against companies doing business with Cuba. The sanctions are kicking in as some international businesses are now starting to withdraw from Cuba. The island is losing credit card processing as banks are pulling back and international hotel chains are pulling out. Part of that, of course, is that tourism is basically dried up on the island as all of these stories about the problems on the island have gotten out around the world. The large force in the island's economy is called GAISA, Grupo de Administración Empresaria, S.A. It is a sprawling business conglomerate owned and operated by the Cuban Revolutionary Armed Forces. It is estimated to control between 40 and 70% of the Cuban economy. By itself, this is a good reason to seal off Cuba. Why should anyone support the repressive government of Cuba? The feds have sanctioned Cuba's state oil company, which is designed to put more pressure on the joke regime running Cuba. That means no American company can do business with it. Hard to run a country when there is no energy. Remember, Castro never made it on his own. His terrorist government was propped up by the USSR from 1959 until that commie operation failed in 1990. Since then, they have relied on the kindness of whack regimes. They were especially relying on discounted oil from Venezuela. That ended with Maduro's arrest early this year. Cuba has been in full crisis mode since then. Further proof that communism does not work. It is fascinating to me that you can have clowns like the failed mayor of New York City claiming to be a commie, And yet, look at the economic failures and the murders. Estimates for deaths attributed to communist regimes and policies range between 80 million and 100 million people globally. These totals encompass deaths from executions, labor camps, and man-made famines. The two largest numbers in the total are from the CCP, with 65 million deaths, with a good part of that due to Mao's failed Great Leap Forward and Cultural Revolution. Then there is the Soviet Union with 20 million deaths, mostly under the regimes of Joseph Stalin and Vladimir Lenin. Given the staggering amount of evidence, only liberal idiots vote for commies. Of course, America has its fake commies like Bernie Sanders, who's a capitalist. He pretends to be a commie to get votes from the uninformed while he lives in his 3 mansions. So he's definitely not a very good communist, folks. As the end of the famed book Animal Farm reminds us, all pigs are equal, but some pigs are more equal than others. Time to end teen takeovers. Look, I'm a proud baby boomer. We respected our parents, worked hard in school, and helped America prosper. The greatest generation were our parents and set the right example for us. If a teen got out of hand, police would box the kid's ears. And when the teen got home, he got a belt to his butt from his parents. These days, the police and the parents would get arrested. And what do we have to show for it? Something called teen takeovers. I began hearing about this with a report from Northern Virginia. I saw a short news video of kids tossing a Chipotle restaurant. The whole thing took a few minutes. Apparently, the violent scum were out there before the police arrived. It caused thousands of dollars in damage. If there were other customers there, I am sure they were scared to death. There's video of the event, and I'm sure they could track down this vermin. In fact, I'm insisting that the cops start tracking them down. Following that and other problems in that area, there are calls to prosecute the parents of the poorly guided youth. These events cause harm to the locations, other customers, and to the general public. It also means that police, who should be patrolling our neighborhoods, are wasting time chasing unruly teens. Early in May, a story out of Tampa, Florida said that 22 kids aged 12 to 21 were arrested. Other takeovers have included gunfire. There were serious problems in Chicago over Memorial Day weekend. There were multiple teen takeover events organized via social media. The incidents resulted in dozens of arrests, violence, and injuries to police officers. Think about it. Time to respect the dead Americans who fought for freedom around the world. This was ruined by punks whose parents failed to keep track of them. A recent report talked about a teen takeover at St. Catherine's Catholic Church Fun Fest. This was in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. There were hundreds of teens at the event. Sadly, there were multiple fights, and the event was actually shut down due to the inexcusable violence. While 11 of the miscreants were grabbed by the police, apparently only 2 were charged. I would have locked up every one of them involved in the damage or violence. That is the right way to end this. Secondary to this event, there were reports of thefts at a local drugstore and a supermarket. Again, security and guards in these stores should be able to use force to protect assets and other customers. But this is not possible due to the over-liberal interpretation of the laws these days. Spare the rod and spoil the child was good advice in the past. I think it should still work today. These events are not spontaneous. There's planning done on social media. On the plus side, cops in one area found out about a takeover being planned, tracked it, and then stopped it before it happened. Good for them. I note that some communities and malls are enforcing curfews. One mall has endured so much trouble, they now ban teens who do not have an adult with them. I also recommend that communities announce that such behavior will not be tolerated. Be sure there is judicial action against the bad actors and against the parents. Maybe it's time America reviews the law that prevents cruel and unusual punishment because people just do not fear prisons like they used to. If the actors are minors, charge the parents for contributing to the delinquency of a minor. The days of police using nightsticks on kids are past. They can certainly use tear gas and tasers to enforce the message. I think a kid who is taken down by a taser, writhes on the floor while peeing his pants in public, might have a better understanding of the need to obey the law. With summer upon us, time to act now to stop this nonsense. Endless entertainment on the political scene. In Maine, the Dems are running a whack job who just covered up a Nazi tattoo on his chest. Graham Plattner claims to be a regular guy, but apparently came from a wealthy family. He reportedly has an oyster farm, but his mom's restaurant is its only customer. Then, several women have come forward to complain about some weird sexual conduct on his part. Hey folks, hard to be the party of Me Too when you back a guy with what appears to be credible reports of misogyny. Then, here in Texas, we have whack job Tallarico. By now, all of us with common sense know that the Dems run as moderates, and then, when they fool the electorate into voting for them, they turn into far lefties. A current example is Scamburger in Virginia. What a car crash. So Tallarico is trying to pretend he's a moderate, but he cannot hide his true record. He was for transgender surgeries for minors, and now he claims he is not. Famously, on a podcast, Tallarico said that aside from family or friends, he loved trans children the most. What? Then there is immigration. This is a huge issue in Texas due to the mess on the Texas border during the Biden-Harris administration. He is quoted as saying, "We have to ban ICE agents from wearing masks, from kidnapping people off our streets without a warrant." You can't be for border security and say something like that. But then again, he is a Dem desperate to get elected in a red state. His odd religious views will be hard for him to live down in this Bible Belt state. He has been credited with saying that God is non-binary and that there are 6 genders. May I assume he flunked high school freshman biology on that last one? The Dems are dumping big money into states like Texas. I think well-run GOP campaigns should be able to balance that out. And a story we're hearing again and again, a big chain is closing a bunch of outlets across the U.S. This time, to my surprise, it's Papa John's. That's right, Papa John's has started closing locations in North America. A total of 300 are likely to be closed. Reported states include California, Texas, Arizona, Michigan, North Carolina, and Virginia. I note that these states may have the most locations to start with, so not sure if it is a percentages or a brutal competition in some of those markets. Similar to other chains cutting back, the shutdowns mostly impact franchise locations which are not meeting company targets. This trend, of course, reflects more limited family budgets and high operating costs for restaurants. I would also note the array of frozen and fresh pizzas in grocery stores is impressive. In fact, my favorite is in the frozen food aisle, and I keep 1 or 2 in my deep freeze for the rare day that I want to fudge on my diet. We love fan mail, from Ricky in Toronto, Canada, to Brushwood Media. Toronto guy listening to your network daily. Love the music and shows. However, one especially has caught my ear. On Saturday night, I heard show Let's Save America with Dr. David. While I'm not from the U.S., I pray for you guys that the strength will come your way to fight the evil amongst you. Can you let the doctor know I concur with 99.9% of all he says? Why not 100%? No reason. Don't want you to think I'm a bot sending this to you. Seriously, pass along my comments and compliments. Signed, Ricky across the border. Ricky, thank you for listening, first of all, and then a special thanks for letting us know that you're listening. And we'll look forward to hearing more from Ricky and others. And in our special interest report this week, malaria could be making a comeback. Malaria can have fatal consequences. All I know about it personally is that when I went to Africa, I began taking malaria medicine before I left and continued it for a week after I returned. I had no side effects from the medication and will certainly take it again in the future if I'm traveling to countries where such caution is recommended. But what about here in the good old USA? Generally, we do not worry about it. Supposedly, it was eliminated over 75 years ago in America. However, travelers can bring it back home. The CDC reports the cases have been rising for a long time because of persons traveling around who have the disease, and then they get bitten by mosquitoes that can spread this disease around, and that is an increasing risk. So, a traveler returns to the U.S. with malaria. A mosquito bites them and then bites another person. It's as simple as that. Soon you can have a spread of disease to persons who have not left the States. To my amazement, there are reported 2,000 cases of malaria each year in the U.S. Symptoms include fever, chills, and headaches. If untreated, it can in rare cases lead to death. A stunning number is over 600,000 persons died of malaria in 2024, mostly in Central Africa. The CDC is recommending that public authorities spray to reduce the mosquito population. Further, I assume strong promotional efforts should be made to get the rest of us to wear repellent when outside in the early evening during the warm months, which is prime time for being bit. And that's my Week in Review report for week 25 of 2026. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate your feedback and concerns. And remember, you can always like, comment, and subscribe right below. And if you've got any ideas for a specific episode or topic, be sure to let us know in the comments. And we generally not only read all the comments, we try and take action based on them. And you can also see us at our website, DrDaveSavesAmerica.com.